Despite the imperialistic designs of education language policies in British colonies, they did play a role in spreading English in different parts of the world. The colonial language policy in Asia wasn't much different from the one in Africa. Just as in Africa, mining comprised the dominant economic factor in African colonies, in Asia, agriculture comprised the most important economic concern of the colonizers. The main aim of the education policy of the British colonizers was not to spread education or to educate the local people, but to maintain the agricultural basis of production. So, a part of their education policy was to impart primary education in vernacular and offer this education to masses. Majority of the masses, we must not forget, worked on these British Asian plantations. And it was also made sure that this education was so restricted that it could not lead to any university level education. So the idea was to offer the kind of education which made sure that these people remained restrained or restricted to the land on which they worked as laborers. Colonial administrator is cited as saying about Malaysia that nothing is taught which will tend to drive Malays from the agricultural pursuits. So it was made sure that they were not taught anything that could help them move on to better prospects in life. So they were given the education which could only help them in becoming, let's say, better bullock drivers or paddy growers or fishermen. So they were given very little basic education, and that also in vernacular and not in English. In India, one aspect of the language policy was to introduce Sanskrit, Persian, Arabic to the Indians, make opportunities available for the Indians to learn these languages, but not only the Indians, also make these languages available for learning for British civil servants. So the idea was to familiarize these British civil servants with these languages and the environment, and also it was assumed that the knowledge of these languages will help them rule the people better who use those languages or who own those languages. In 1835, English was given the status of the language of higher administration, judiciary and education in India, and this was an effort to anglicize the Indian people, because English was not only a means of education, let's say, or a means of carrying out day-to-day jobs of judiciary. It was also considered a vehicle of Western ideas, culture, values, etc. And the idea was that when Indians learn this language, use this language in different domains, this policy will help anglicize the Indians, and this will subsequently make them more loyal to the British Crown. So the socio-economic purpose which were assigned to education, they were also reflected in the language policy of the British colonizers. So one aspect of this policy was that colonial service should be provided to the commercial enterprises of the Crown, the British Empire, and for performing these services, a class of clerks was needed. Clerks and civil servants were needed who were well versed in English. So a part of the policy was to prepare a class of clerks or civil servants who were able to offer the service, the administrative service, to the British Empire. On the other hand, they needed laborers to work on the plantations, and for them, they did not need to teach them English, these people only were given this small amount of education, which was barely enough to retain them to their existing workplaces. So the laborers on the British plantations were not taught any English, because they were not meant to progress in their lives and move on, but to remain where they were, that is, continue working as laborers, farmers on the British plantations. It was soon realized that English served the purpose of making better government jobs available for those who knew English, and therefore a strong demand of English emerged among the native people. So those who worked as laborers, they also realized that the vernacular education up to the primary level will not get them anywhere, and it was only the English education which could get them a job in the government. So not only Asians, Africans also realized the economic value of English education, and to be able to improve in life, progress in life, and get jobs other than working on these farms or in the mines, the African and Asian youth realized that they needed to learn English. So despite all the efforts made by the colonizers through their language policy of retaining the masses where they were, within the confines of the mines in Africa and plantations in Asia, the youth in both these continents, the colonized countries in these continents, made several efforts, great efforts, to learn English and to be able to improve their prospects. So we see that the education language policy in colonized countries, the policy followed by British colonizers, was based on their economic concerns and not a genuine concern for educating the native people.